So, John, I know we were thinking about uh, making a few points on going from early in a relationship to establishing a relationship, getting started. And I wanted to ask you a question that's a little bit outside of what we talked about, but it has to do with you being the relationship guy. And that is, I'm a woman, I'm a cis woman. And when I talk to other women, they tell me that they kind of, not all of them, but some of them have the same experience, which is that it's tough to have sex without falling in love. That when you are physically intimate with someone, it's a little bit hard to just get up and walk away without a note, without a goodbye, despite what we see in the media. Is that just because I'm a granny, or is that something you find in the world today?
Oxytocin is the chemical that gets released as a bonding hormone when we have sex. It's more common. It's more. You get more released as a woman. So the bond, it's a releasing hormone that when you have a baby as well, it helps you to bond with your child. So I think with women there is definitely more of a connection than with men hormonally. But I think again it depends on your mindset as well. There's more avoidant personalities in men than there are women, so I think it's easier for in learned behavior as well for men to kind of walk away from sex as just a sex act than it is for women. And I think in general sex is generally more of an intimate act for women than it is for men too. I mean, I know from my experience of working with people that there is a difference in some people the way that they view sex, and sex is more of a way of gaining affection with people that might have more of an anxious personality, and it's more common for women to have an anxious personality than it is for men. So there's a few reasons why we view sex slightly differently, and we might feel differently. We might become more bonded through the act of having a sexual experience. But it generally depends on how you view sex, what it means to you. But there's that hormonal element that may make a difference too.
So tell me, I've heard you talk about avoidant personality types before. How do I know one if I see one? Like if I'm looking for a bond, how do I know that the person I'm looking at is avoidant? How do we know?
Unfortunately, you probably don't to start with. There's two types of kind of avoidant personality. One of them is someone that just doesn't want to be involved in a relationship whatsoever. So they'll be very clear in their signaling that they're not in any way, shape, or form looking for anything committed. But unfortunately, the other avoidant type of personality is someone that really desperately wants to be connected and committed in a relationship, but doesn't really know how to. So they'll be maybe a little bit full on at the start. So you have to be mindful of a bit of love bombing. So they might be too good to be true type people. If they come into it a bit too full on, and maybe, like I said, a bit too good to be true, they're just kind of the signs to work out that maybe someone is avoidant, because they'll get to a point and then they'll stop doing all of that because their brain will switch into an avoidant space. But generally, they'll come in two types. There's someone who, like I said, who just doesn't want to be involved at all. They make it very clear that they don't want to be involved at all. They won't make any extra kind of effort to be with you, see you, and anything else. They'll keep you at arm's length. And then the other type will be too full on. So it's just noticing you want to like a happy medium of someone that really wants to spend some time with you, but doesn't clamor to do it all the time and doesn't want to buy you stuff or take you places or just be generally too good to be true.
As I think about, what is interesting for our audience is long-term relationships, getting into a relationship that has the potential to last for decades. One set of recommendations that are, like know what you want, be clear up front. I want a partner, I want a baby, I want a house, I want a picket fence. And then there's the other style of, don't do any of that. Don't let them know until you're clear that that's the person you want. How do those early conversations go when you know in your heart that you're looking for a relationship that could go on for a while, long while?
I don't think these are conversations that you necessarily need to have with that person from the start, because you don't know the person. You don't even know if you want to be with the person anyway. So I would get to know the person first, but I would enter the idea of dating or looking for a relationship with a clear idea about what it is that you are looking for, just so that you can switch on within yourself the kind of attraction type of style that brings the type of person you're looking for towards you. If you're very clear of the type of things that you want, then the likelihood is that your radar is going to be out there looking for those types of people, and then get to know someone first of all, just to see actually if there's someone that you like before you even consider whether this is something that's going to really go anywhere. You can ask very kind of subtle questions. Generally, people give quite a lot away when they're talking anyway, about whether they've got any ambitions for their future, what kind of lifestyle they want when as they get older. So they're quite a natural conversation piece that all comes up in a lot of circumstances anyway. But I wouldn't place too much emphasis on it until you actually know that you like somebody. And also, you're very in your head as well if you're looking for those things all the time. And you need, and that sort of takes away from who you are as a human being. At the same time, you don't want to be too much in a thinking space. You want to be more in a doing space with somebody, so that you're actually just experiencing that moment, experiencing that person, and just to see if there is any kind of connection there, or something that you're feeling is positive coming from them anyway, and someone that you really feel like you want to spend some time with. And the more that you're in your head, the less likely that is to happen. So yes, have a very clear idea about what it is that you want. But when I work with my clients, I also get them to think about what they want to give to a relationship at the same time. It's not all about what we want moving forwards. It's all about what we're prepared to give to a relationship as well, because we can get a little bit lost in this what's in it for me type scenario. And therefore we lose sight of actually, well, what am I prepared to offer to this person that I maybe want to spend the rest of my life with at the same time? And if we've got any hang-ups around connection, or not being prepared to give of ourselves and put ourselves into maybe a vulnerable space or into a committed space, then we're also going to possibly attract the wrong type of people.
I love that. You and I had talked about how the impulse when working with going into relationship coaching is, I'm tell me how to change them. Right? They do this thing I hate and they do that thing I hate. And if they really cared about me, they would do X, Y, and Z. How do you help people get from the focus on, this is what I want from them, this is what I expect from them, this is what they have to do for me, to, oh, this is who I am, this is what I'm ready to give, and here's, why is this valuable to someone else, and who would this be valuable to? How do you help people with that shift?
I would say that there's a lot of introspection that needs to go on. Is why we could come in with a set of rules, and those rules are probably there because of the experiences that we've had. Generally, people come and see me with a list of I don't wants, and unfortunately, that never works, because then we start looking for everything we don't want in a relationship, and then you start attracting all the people that you don't want, because that's where your brain's focused. And we need to first of all take a step back and go, okay, what do you want, and why do you want it? What does that mean to you? And like you said, if you're looking for someone to fit into a little box, that's never going to happen. So we need to look at what you're talking about. Why are you saying you want those types of things in a person? And also, again, like I said earlier, so like, what are you prepared to give to somebody at the same time? And are there any blockers there? Is there, well, basically, I just call it resistance. Is there any resistance for you to connect with somebody and to give of yourself in a relationship as well? Because you can't just expect to get everything you want from somebody if you're not prepared to offer something in return, or something of yourself in return. But with, as far as what you were saying earlier on, I want this and I want that type thing, and I need to fix them and they don't do this. I mean, if there's too many of them things, why are you with them in the first place? Because they're clearly not fitting into what you really want in someone. If they could be reasons that you're trying to escape from a relationship, or you're just looking for faults, you're looking for problems, because you could hold a certain sense of relationship beliefs around what relationships are actually like. The relationships are always trouble, or they can never be perfect. So you could consciously or subconsciously be looking to pick holes in a relationship anyway, because of your own mindset. So again, it's working on that space that you might be carrying some unhealthy beliefs into that relationship in the first place. And are you throwing spanners into the works type of thing, just so that you can keep yourself at a safe distance? Where you're coming from personally, that you expect all of this from somebody else. It could be that you've had some really awful experiences in relationships previously, and you've never really had your needs met and never got what you wanted. So you're adamant this time you're going to get everything you want. But again, is that realistic? And are are the things that you actually want really what you want? Are you just, again, like you say, looking at people and saying, this is what I don't want moving forwards? So there's a few things that we need to look at as far as what your mindset is around relationships in general. Is there any sort of patterns that you've had from the past that have led you into this space, to the choices that you're now making? As I said a bit earlier on about attachment, you're avoidant attachment, or you're an anxious attachment. to understand what that is for you again, because you could be putting blockers in place or difficulties in your own way, or you could be attracting a certain type of person towards you because you are a certain type of attachment style yourself. Unfortunately, there is a tendency that an insecure attachment will attract an insecure attachment.
I'm a human, and I've had a string of relationships that blew up. Is it the wise course to just leave the battlefield for a little while and spend time working on myself? Or is it better to work on these issues of what's going on with me while, in process with new relationships, with dating, with being out there? Is it better to be alone to do some kind of deep work, or is it better to be engaged and to notice what's going on while you're out there trying something new?
Initially, I would do it when you're single, because you're not going to really be able to overcome your triggers if you're constantly being triggered. And if you haven't worked on your own space first to have a clearer understanding of who you are, how you feel, what you think, what the issues might come up for you, how you might be triggered, then if you're going to put yourself straight into another dating scenario, you're just going to re-experience it all the time without having a clear understanding of where you're coming from. Your relationship with yourself might be pretty unhealthy as well, because if you've come from a lot of disastrous type relationship spaces, it's going to have had some impact on you somewhere along the line. And I would also suggest that the fact that you're having a series of disastrous relationships, there was something that you're bringing into the scenario in the first place that means that these relationships are sort of ending in the same way, or coming to the same types of conclusions anyway. So there would probably be definitely something a bit deeper to look at. Okay, why is it that you keep ending up in these relationships that end up being pretty destructive in the first place? Because there's going to be something coming from me for sure if that's the case. When you see a red flag, and then I'd like to say, is that a you thing or a me thing? So am I bringing up a red flag because I've got an issue with something, or is it generally something that they're doing that needs to be raised in my own mind and say, okay, this person's not quite right for me, and I need to either address it or just say thank you, but no thank you. So for a certain amount of time, I would say it's best to do this single. If you've been single for a while and you've done a bit of work on yourself, then yes, it's something you can then practice in the world of dating. When I started dating, I was going, oh, this is really interesting, because you can see all this stuff happening around you that you were completely oblivious of before, or would trigger something in you which then would make you react in a certain way which you're now not reacting like, because you're like, oh, I can see that, and that's not affecting me anymore because I've done this work on myself. And then it makes it so much easier then for you to kind of make a rational decision about whether this is the right person for you to spend any more time with or not, and also to understand yourself a little bit more. And like I said, is it a me thing or is it a them thing? Is this something that in the relationship I'm not comfortable with, or is this actually something that is about me that I'm finding difficult to manage in this moment? And having that sort of self-awareness is really important when it comes to the kind of the early stages of the relationship. And as you said earlier on about how do I notice an avoidant type person, if you've got an awareness of yourself and also the kind of the intricacies of how someone else might work, which is some of the stuff that I also do in my coaching, is about not understanding yourself, but understanding how other people tick, and keeping an eye out for certain signs in other people. It's a much easier space for you to remain centered in and make a rational decision about whether you want to continue with that connection or not.
I have two questions. The first one is it possible to just say directly to someone, you're not going to be able to attract a healthy relationship until you are healthy? You can't attract a healthy relationship until you are healthy. When people say, as they often do, I just have bad luck, I'm like a magnet for jerk. The question is, well, what is it in me that's magnetized, right? Why am I a magnet for jerks? Although the question feels like, oh, the jerks are all out there and they have some special radar that helps them find me. So it's really two parts of the same question, I think. So can you say directly, until you're healthy, you're not gonna have a healthy relationship?
It is going to be an easier thing for you to do if you are emotionally healthier. We are all works in progress, as you're aware. We might not ever be completely healthy. It's just if you go into it with a clearer understanding of the space that you're in, it's going to be a much easier space for you to manage and for you to find the right type of person. The reason that you keep attracting jerks is because you have a jerk magnet inside of you. So there's something about what you're attracted to, not just what they're attracted to in you. So it's not just what they're coming towards, it's what you're going towards at the same time. So if you constantly attract a certain type of person, there's something within you that's on the same kind of energy level as them, which brings that attraction together. So we would need to move your attraction, your energy to a different level, and then the jerks will not be attracted to you any longer. They will just pass you by. If you're carrying a jerk magnet, we need to let go of the jerk magnet. We need to change your energy. We need what you're looking for, what you're not looking for, what you are attracted to, what you're not attracted to. Your attachment style is, what your beliefs are. Everything that you're carrying inside of you is going to have in some way informing who you bring in towards you. And it's about making those changes so that you can increase your energy or change your energy to a different level, so that when they do come towards you, they're like, oh, this person doesn't fit where I want to go, so I'm going to walk right past. And we all have our own different wants. We all have our own different needs from a relationship. It's hard to give you specifics because I don't know what everyone wants from a relationship until I talk to them. But I would say if you're dating someone or you meet someone and you're getting at least 80% of what you want from a relationship, and so long as the other 20% isn't one massive thing, like you want kids, they don't want kids, because that's never really going to sit well in any kind of relationship space. So long as you're getting at least 80%, and most people settle for a lot less. But when I work with my clients, we need to make sure that we are clear on how we want to feel in this relationship, what we want to get from this relationship, what we want to give from this relationship. And if I can have 80%, at least 80%, then I'm probably onto a winner. If I say to my client, if I ask you, and it's kind of difficult maybe sometimes to answer, if you could give me a percentage out of 100, how you think your needs have been met so far in your life, most people that I speak to would never give me a figure more than 40%, because they keep finding themselves in these relationships. And I think a lot of that stuff comes from early relationships where they may have experienced something which is maybe they only got 20 or 30%. So if they then get 30 or 40% of what they want, that actually feels a lot better, but it's still not enough. So we have to kind of raise the bar a bit and say, I'm not going to be in a relationship with someone long term unless I feel and I know that at least 80% of what I want and need is there. And then I would say you're probably going to experience, and almost definitely going to experience, a really happy relationship space.
I was thinking, John, that over the course of my marriage, the percentage has shifted over time. It's not like 80% every day, or it's never been a number that stays over a decade, but the trend line has gone up. So there have been times when if you asked me, the answer might have been 40%. Today, the answer would probably be 85. I think part of what you're talking about that one learns to give, in addition to does it make the other person happy, is can I offer the other person grace? Because when you're married, you're gonna irritate each other. I just think that's inevitable. And so, what happens when you're annoying? That's I think where what you're talking about comes in is that space of, oh my God, if she loads the dishwasher that way one more time, I'm gonna have to take her out back and shoot her. Here's my question. So you go in the bathroom, you see that once again the toothpaste has been squeezed in the middle, and there's a big dent there. And you guys have talked about it maybe 100 million times. What happens to you in that moment? Like how do you process that in a healthy way?
I say it doesn't matter. If this is not important, just go and squeeze it from the end and make it look tidy. There's no reason for you to be that irritated or upset about it. And so I'm going to say, okay, what's really going, I'm going to wonder what's really going on here that's the problem. I had a couple a while ago that I was talking to, and they had an issue that she would leave the spoons, the teaspoons on the side for some reason. She'd even after they'd washed them up, the lady would leave the teaspoons on the side, and it just irritated him and irritated. And they would fight about it all the time. Will you please remember to put the teaspoons away? And it wasn't about the teaspoons. It was about the fact that he felt that she had no respect for him, that she had high expectations of him. And none of this was ever talked about. It wasn't really a space that they'd ever come together on. So it wasn't about the spoons. It was about the fact that he felt the spoons resembled the fact that she didn't care, that she expected too much of him, that she wasn't prepared to put herself out for him. And so it was a much deeper space than the spoons. Eventually, he just said, you know what, if I see the spoons on the side, I'm just going to put them in the drawer. That's all that needs to happen, because they were able to iron out the actual things that were really the issues that were going on.
I think you've just talked about what a healthy relationship is, which is how do we process the communication that nonverbal and verbal, the communication that comes from the other, right? How do we hear that? And are we able to give our partner the benefit of the doubt, and look inward and say, oh, maybe it's not that they're a jerk. Maybe I've got something that got triggered in me or that he did. Yeah.
I always start, I know it's really, because it's something that we don't generally do. I always try and get, especially with myself, and I try and get my clients to this as well, is firstly, don't make it about you. If your partner's in a bad space, in a shitty mood, or whatever it might be, don't initially go, what have I done? Or how can I make this right? Or is this about us? It's just to go, what's up? But don't initially assume that you are the problem, because that's what we do have a tendency to do, unfortunately, is go, okay, they've got the ump with me for some reason, but actually they might just have the ump about something else. And it's a go, okay, what's up? And then if hopefully you've got enough of a trust and belief in each other in the relationships that they'll go, you know what, it is you, and they'll tell you what the problem is. But most of the time you're going to go, you all right? Do you want to talk about something? And they'll hopefully, if they'll go, you know what, it's not that important, it doesn't really matter. And then you say, well, I'm here if you want space to talk or whatever. But usually they'll just tell you, like, oh, this has happened, or I'm feeling like this, or whatever. And then you can come together in a nice communicative and loving space to hopefully help someone through whatever they're going through. But initially, I would say, if you can, do your best not to make it about you. And then if it is about you, then you can address it.
There's another topic that we haven't talked about that I hear behind closed doors, and that is, this is sort of moving a little bit, but that's about money and what the expectations are, specifically about. Well, let's start with how much money the other person makes, right? And there's this kind of math that one hears people talk about where you'll see a guy who's maybe not so great looking with a woman who's stunning, and the reflex is, wow, I bet he has a big bank account, right? Or uh, I know I was one of my young friends entered into a relationship, and I noticed that the first question I heard about this guy a lot of the time was, oh, what kind of job does he have? Like how much money does he make? And conversely, I've heard from guys about, she just wants me for money, right? I have to pay for everything. She expects me to make a lot of money. Is this sort of a tough thing for people, these unspoken assumptions to talk about in your coaching? And particularly because you're the relationship guy, what are men feeling about this?
I think there's a shift. I think a couple of years ago, probably there was a lot of this. There was a lot of people saying, like, a guy needs to look after me. I don't want to be with a guy unless he's got this money and he can do that for me and that. And I guess, and then that was pushed as an agenda for a little while. That seems to be taking a back step, because I think guys have kind of wised up to it a little bit. But again, that's all about you. That's all about what's going on for you and what the meaning that you give to finances. So I know guys, a lot of guys, they won't be happy if their partner earns more than them. This is why good-looking women that generally would go with a guy that's not particularly good looking, might not even be a particularly nice person, but has loads of money. It's a status thing. It's protection. It's what they can offer me. It's how they can look after me. So there's a deep subconscious stuff in our genes around females going for males in the best positions, because I'm going to be safer like that. I'm going to be looked after like that. And so there is something that's still in our psyche, I think, around that we place meaning on. And I think it's the same. It kind of comes from the guys as well. I need to provide. I need to be the person that does this. I need to be the person that does that. And if my partner is earning more money than me or provides more than I do, then it's not something I'm going to could be overly comfortable with.
That's almost a time bound agreement, right? Because if circumstances change, then, well, I'll put it as a question. Are those relationships resilient enough, in your experience, to stay healthy for the long term? Or are those relationships that are bound to come under enough pressure to make them break when, somebody loses her looks or he loses his job or like something shifts? What have you seen in that regard?
It depends on how severe it is, I guess. The thing with the money, I think, is a problem. I think if you're not strong enough in your relationship and there is a shift in the dynamics of the finances, that does cause a lot more problems, I think, than whether someone loses their looks or becomes a little bit overweight, because we have a tendency to kind of love that person generally more for who they are than what they can offer you. But it doesn't mean that the stuff might not be triggered for somebody, that they feel a bit worthless or they feel a bit less than, if circumstances shift dramatically. And then that can obviously impact on the dynamics of the relationships. If you meet someone and they go to the gym 5 times a week, and that's one of the things you like about them, not just because they've got a nice body because they're fit, but because actually you like that about them, because that's the kind of person you want to be. If you want to be with someone who looks after themselves and keeps healthy, and then they decide they're not going to do that anymore, then I think you've got every right to go, actually, this isn't the kind of person that I signed up to be with. I thought you were something else. I thought you had different ideas about things. And then to talk about that and say, okay, what's this about? Why don't you want to keep fit? Why don't you want to keep healthy anymore? And is there something going on for you? Are you lacking confidence? Is your self-worth a bit low? Or have you just become distracted with other things? You don't really have the time for it anymore. And is it something that we can do together, or, working that out? But it's understanding whether that's changed, the person's changed, or whether the circumstances have changed, and therefore is this something that we can work on together to kind of put us back on the place that we want to be on. And that's why communication is so important. And if you've got a good level of communication, that you're close enough to share with one another, that you trust each other with your space, then when these things do start to shift, they're things that you can generally talk through, and come to some kind of how you're going to work through this together space. If I'm not openly communicating my emotions with my partner, then they're never going to, it's just going to cause problems further down the line. And then hopefully you can then say, okay, how do we work on this together to help you to feel better, and also to improve your situation?
Fighting about money is the number 2 cause of divorce, right behind infidelity. So I can see where it's a rough one, especially because it has to do with self-image, right? It has to do with what you were talking about.
Statistically, infidelity isn't about sex. Statistically, infidelity is about not feeling valued. Most research suggests that if infidelity is not really about the sex, it's about the fact that someone is offering you something that is no longer existing in your relationship with the person that you're with. So men have like what they call a hero complex. They need to feel special. And if that's not going on, and then all of a sudden someone starts to pay you some positive attention, tells you that you look nice, was interested in what you're doing, wants to know about your hobbies and all that kind of stuff, it can trigger something which could then lead to something being more sexual or more intimate. When you first meet someone, right, you generally want to see them all the time. You tell them how nice they look, how nice they smell. You want them to know that you want to be around them. And again, this is something we need to continue to do in our longer term relationships, is to make the person that you're with feel that you actually really like them still, and you really still interested in them, and you want to spend time with them, and you want to have deep conversations with them, or you want to know about them and everything else. So it's important, that kind of stuff you keep going.
I want to comment on what there's a message underneath what the 2 of us are doing here, I think, which is saying it is possible. It is possible. We both believe and are living the reality that it is possible to have a meaningful long term relationship. And in the world, there's so many messages from people, and even people we care about, saying, nah, not anymore. That's old school, not worth it, doesn't happen. You can't really do it. Look how many times you've messed up, blah, 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 blah. And into all that negativity, I think the intention that John and I share is to say, you know what, you can do this. You can do this, and you can have this be part of your life. And there's a very strong likelihood that your life will be more abundant, more beautiful, and richer in every way if you do the work to make it possible. It's worth it. John Kenny, relationship guy, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a ton from you, and I hope our viewers did the same. And I hope that there's someone who needs your help, who hears this, who comes and finds you, because virtually is cool. We're in very different time zones, and yet still an impact is possible. Love is possible. Lasting love is possible. And John can help you find that. Thank you so much.